El primer ponente de hoy es el padre Paul Kimball. Por sus responsabilidades eclesiásticas no pudo venir hoy en vivo. Nos envió un video muy bonito que habla precisamente de lo que quería venir a hablar. Un pequeño resumen de quién es el padre Paul Kimball, un sacerdote de la Sociedad de San Pío X, ordenado en 1989. Sirvió como capellán universitario en Kansas durante 7 años, capellán de las Hermanas de la Sociedad de San Pío X en Browerville, Minnesota, durante 10 años, prior en Singapur y en Inglaterra. Durante 5 años enseñó en una escuela primaria en Sudáfrica y ha servido en varias misiones. En este momento está en Harare, en Zimbabue. Ha publicado la biografía del padre García Moreno en inglés, español, francés e italiano. La historia de Nuestra Señora del Buen Suceso en 6 idiomas, la historia de la Dolorosa del Colegio San Gabriel de Quito, tradujo al inglés un comentario de San Tomás de Aquino sobre el Evangelio de San Mateo y por último publicó varios libros sobre el sacerdocio. Para los que nos están siguiendo de países de habla inglesa, una pequeña introducción de él en inglés. Father Paul Kimball is a priest from the Society of St. Pius X, ordained in 1989. He served in St. Mary's College in Kansas for 7 years, and in the Sisters of the Society of St. Pius X in Browerville, Minnesota for 10 years. He also served in the Priory of Singapore and Bristol, England. For 5 years, he taught in a primary school in South Africa, and is right now in Harare, Zimbabwe. Has published the biography of Garcia Moreno of Father Berthe in English, Spanish, French, and Italian. The history of Our Lady of the Good Event in 6 different languages, and many books about priesthood. His topic of today will be an introduction to the life of Gabriel García Moreno. Better than writing about history is making it. Ahora, el tema del que va a hablar el padre Paul Kimball será una introducción sobre la vida de don Gabriel García Moreno. Mejor que escribir la historia es hacerla.
Welcome to all the viewers of this International Garcian Congress. As an introduction to the conferences which will be given, let us consider in general the importance of the life of President Gabriel García Moreno, who was assassinated on the 6th of August, 1875. When I first visited Quito in 2006, a tour guide working in the cathedral was surprised that I spoke in favor of García Moreno, since he is widely criticized in Ecuador today. He asked if I knew of any book that supported him. I gave him a copy of Father Agustin Berth's biography of García Moreno in Spanish from a local bookstore. He read it and then changed his mind about García Moreno, so much so that a few years later he served as our tour guide for the pilgrimage groups that I brought from Asia and Europe. The Catholic Church has a forgotten social doctrine, which condemns the separation of church and state. The union of church and state was the cornerstone of Christendom in the Middle Ages. Freemasonry, according to the teachings of the popes in many encyclicals, strives to overthrow the church. To do this, it firstly needed to secularize the Catholic nations by separating them from the church, which is their soul and link to God. Italy and Colombia were among the last nations to cease to be Catholic nations, which recognized the Catholic religion as the religion of the state. García Moreno, by God's providence, freed Ecuador for a time from the death grip of Freemasons by reuniting it to the Church. As a result, Ecuador blossomed spiritually, intellectually, and materially. Such a success drew down the wrath of the Freemasons. Otto von Bismarck of Prussia decreed the death of our hero, for his having proved that the Catholic social principles work in modern times as successfully as they did in the past. The lodges in Peru then hired Faustino Reo to do this evil deed, but such a death, willingly accepted in defense of the faith, brought far greater glory to Garcia Moreno by making him a model for all Catholic heads of state to follow in his footsteps. What remains to be done now is to make known the truth about this model, who in fact died as a martyr for the kingship of Christ. Christ must rule as King of nations, of families, and of all society. May these conferences correct the false information that Freemasonry has spread against the defender of Christian civilization. He has died, but God does not die. Long live Christ the King. Deus non muere, viva Cristo Rey. I will now give my blessing to all the organizers, speakers, and viewers of this Congress. Benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris Filii Spiritus Sancti, Descendat Vos Mani et Semper. Amen. Which means in English, may the blessing of God descend upon you and remain forever. Amen. Gabriel Garcia Moreno, the Thomas Becket of the Americas. For English-speaking viewers, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Father Paul Kimball, and I am a priest of the Society of St. Pius X. I am currently stationed in South Africa. I am honored to have been asked to be a panelist for the Garcian International Congress. As a self-publisher, I republished the biography of President Gabriel Garcia Moreno by Father Augustine Berth, which was out of print for 100 years, and also a translation of the book about the consecration of Ecuador to the Sacred Heart. Another book relating to Garcia Moreno is the story of Our Lady of Good Success. These titles and more are available from Dolorosa Press in Spanish and in English. The story of Our Lady of Good Success is available in 6 different languages. On January 16, 1599, Our Lady of Good Success appeared to Venerable Mother Mariana of Jesus Torres, Abbess of the Royal Convent of the Order of the Immaculate Conception in Quito, Ecuador. Our Lady told Mother Mariana these prophetic words: "In the 19th century, a truly Christian president will come, a man of character, to whom our Lord God will give the palm of martyrdom in the plaza on which this convent is located. He will consecrate the Republic of Ecuador to the divine heart of my beloved Son, and this consecration will sustain the Catholic religion in the subsequent years, which will be ill-fated for the Church. In these years in which Masonry, that accursed sect, will seize control of the civil government, there will come a cruel persecution of all the religious communities, and it will rage against mine." Unquote. This great Catholic statesman can only be Gabriel Garcia Moreno. He was assassinated in the square in front of the cathedral called the Plaza of Independence, which adjoins the Quito Cathedral, the presidential palace, as well as the Conceptionist Convent of Mother Mariana. As President of Ecuador, he had officially consecrated his country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus by a decree of Congress in 1873. He is the first of 2 key figures who would be special apostles of the kingship of Christ in these modern times of global apostasy and revolution. He would be a bishop in the world of Catholic politics. Here is the famous statue of Our Lady of Good Success in the upper choir of the convent of the Sisters of the Immaculate Conception, which is adjacent to the Presidential Palace in Quito, Ecuador. The statue is said to have been painted by the three archangels, and Our Lady was seen to enter into the statue when it was first completed, and for a time came to life. Here is a painting of Mother Mariana of Jesus Torres, who is the visionary who saw Our Lady of Good Success. She was given a cord by Our Lady, which stretched to her height, indicating thereby how tall to make the statue. The coming of a second apostle of Christ's kingship was foretold on February 2, 1634, when Mother Mariana was told by the Mother of God of the present crisis of the Church, and of a prelate who would restore the priesthood. Our Lady said, "Priests will abandon their sacred duties and will depart from the path marked out for them by God. Then the Church will go through a dark night for lack of a prelate and a father to watch over it with love, gentleness, strength, and prudence, and numbers of priests will lose the Spirit of God, thus placing their souls in great danger. Pray constantly, my most holy Son have pity on his ministers, and that he put an end to such fatal times by sending to his Church the prelate who will restore the spirit of his priests. Upon this my beloved Son, whom my divine Son I love with a love of predilection, will heap many gifts of humility of heart, of docility to varying inspirations, of strength to defend the rights of the Church, and of a heart with which he will, like a new Christ, take possession of the mightiest of men as of the lowliest, without scorning the least fortunate amongst them. With a holy divine gentleness, he will lead consecrated souls to the service of God in religious houses without making the Lord's yoke weigh upon them. He will hold in his hand the scales of the sanctuary for everything to be done in orderly fashion for God to be glorified. This prelate and father will act as a counterweight to the lukewarmness of souls consecrated in the priesthood and in religion." Our Lord predicted to Mother Mariana, quote, "The dogma of faith of my mother's Immaculate Conception will be proclaimed when the Church is fought against more, and my vicar is a captive," unquote. This prophecy was fulfilled by Blessed Pope Pius IX. Mother Mariana's body, along with 3 other founding mothers, was found incorrupt on February 8, 1906, while the convent was being remodeled. This is the hacienda or summer house of Garcia Moreno. This is a second photo of the same hacienda as it now stands. Garcia Moreno was the first head of state in the world to have consecrated his country to the Sacred Heart in 1873. He ordered that an image of the event to be put in all the major churches in Ecuador, like the one in this photo. As the President signed the decree, which was then approved by the Congress, King Louis XIV of France was told by St. Margaret Mary Alacoque in 1689 that the Sacred Heart wished him to do the same. The request was not heeded, and 100 years to the day the kings of France were dethroned. Our Lady foretold that Garcia Moreno would be a truly Catholic president and a man of character. Father Augustin Berth, a French Redemptorist priest, wrote the best biography of this president. He gained some of his information from Bishop Ortinez of Riobamba, an intimate friend of Garcia Moreno. This bishop had narrowly escaped death from being poisoned by somewhat of a miracle. Because of this, he took refuge in Paris, where he awaited better days while receiving medical treatment. Brought then by divine providence to Paris, he was then interviewed there by Father Berth many times. Lady Herbert of Lea, wife of Sidney Herbert, son of the second son of the Earl of Pembroke, translated Father Berth's biography into English from the original French. She had 4 sons and 3 daughters. She converted through the influence of Cardinal Manning, but was forbidden by Parliament to bring her children to Mass, lest the heirs to the earldom of Pembroke become Catholic as well. Only one daughter followed her into the Catholic faith. Ecuador is the 4th smallest sovereign nation in South America, situated on the Pacific Ocean north of Peru. Garcia Moreno was born at Guayaquil, a coastal city, on December 24, 1821. The country lies along the Andes Mountains. His father trained him to be courageous. For example, his father asked him to light the candles around a casket in the dark. Garcia Moreno made long journeys through the mountains, sometimes by himself, in the service of his country. As an example of the chaos which reigned in Ecuador before Garcia Moreno became president, in 1881, President Noboa was arrested by the command of Jose Urbina, who overthrew him in order to become the president in his place. Garcia Moreno was elected to the Senate, but this did not prevent the Masonic revolutionaries from exiling him. He was nearly executed another time, but he convinced his jailer to help him escape for the good of his country. He led an army of volunteers to rescue his country from the hands of the Freemasons who were despoiling it. As president, he made a concordat with the Vatican and established it as an officially Catholic nation. He imported religious teachers for the schools. He tirelessly traveled across the country, often with merely an aide-de-camp. The Masons repeatedly tried to assassinate him. In the province of Ibarra, after a severe earthquake, he was appointed by the government to find volunteers to defend the residents against marauding bandits, as the corrupt government had not the funds to pay the army to do this. For this, the grateful residents of Ibarra named a street after Garcia Moreno and erected this monument as a permanent memorial of his rebuilding their city after the devastating earthquake. He mourned the loss of his wife. He also mourned the loss of his daughter. He convinced the leader of some bandits to save his life and those of his fellow bandits by abandoning their evil way of life. He maintained respectful relations with the Catholic clergy. He built a valuable highway through the mountains, which was considered by many to be impossible. A monument was erected to honor his achievement of this highway through the mountains, opening the door to significant economic growth due to resulting increased international trade. His archenemy was the Freemason Urbina. He commissioned the painting of this picture for the ceremony of the consecration of the country to the Sacred Heart. It was put into the Congress, but later kept in hiding after his assassination. It was this picture which inspired Father Matteo Crowley to begin the worldwide home enthronement of families to the Sacred Heart. Garcia Moreno was requested by Father Manuel Proano to make the consecration, but Garcia Moreno feared that Ecuador, in its current state, was an unworthy offering to the Sacred Heart. Father Proano replied that the consecration would bring the blessing of making them to be worthy of it. Here is a painting made soon after the consecration as a memorial of the great event. It reads, "Consecration of the Republic of Ecuador to the Sacred Heart of Jesus in 1874. Father Julio Matavele renewed the consecration in 1886 and obtained congressional support to build a national memorial of the consecration that could never be removed by the enemies of the Church. He was also the founder of the only native Ecuadorian religious institute of the Oblates of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Mary, founded in 1862. This Basilica of the National Vow was the monument which was built as a permanent memorial of the consecration of Ecuador to the Sacred Heart. A statue of Garcia Moreno was erected in front of the basilica in Garcia Moreno Park on the boulevard also named after him. The Basilica of the National Vow, begun in 1887, is the permanent proof that Ecuador is forever the Republic of the Sacred Heart. It is the largest neo-Gothic basilica in the Americas. A copy of the painting, called the Sacred Heart of Garcia Moreno, is prominently displayed here. Light radiating from the Sacred Heart shines upon Ecuador. The Lady Chapel, or the Capilla del Corazón de María, was incorporated in 1909. The Seminary of the Oblates of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary is attached to the basilica. The seminary has a chapel called the Chapel of the Three Hearts, for here is kept the original picture of the Sacred Heart of Garcia Moreno. On a side wall is displayed the physical heart of Garcia Moreno, preserved in alcohol. Here is a close-up view which shows the prayer petitions left by those asking for the intercession of Garcia Moreno from heaven. Here also is kept the heart of the assassinated Archbishop of Quito, Archbishop Checa Ibarba, poisoned on Good Friday during the Mass of the priest sanctified in 1887. It is kept on the opposite wall. Notice that the top of the jar is in the shape of a priest's biretta. This black and white photo shows the Archbishop's heart more clearly. Here the assassinated president and archbishop are shown on top when alive and below dead, at the time when their bodies were displayed in state. Both the president and archbishop not only consecrated their country to the Sacred Heart, but sealed their offering with their own blood. Because of Garcia Moreno's prowess in scientific knowledge, he established an astronomical observatory well placed in the high altitude of Quito, located on the equator. This statue of the Immaculate Conception was in his office as a sign of his acceptance of the then recently defined dogma of the Immaculate Conception in 1854. This plaque, found in the house of the Jesuits in Quito, commemorates Garcia Moreno's frequent Ignatian retreats made there. In thanksgiving for his ingenious victory at Guayaquil on the feast of Our Lady of Ransom, he declared her the patroness of the Republic to whom he consecrated the country. Garcia Moreno made scientific studies of the volcano of Pichincha, one of the most active volcanoes in the world, at the risk of his own life. The volcano is located at the outskirts of the city of Quito. Garcia Moreno brought the Jesuits back to Ecuador after they had been exiled, for which their school was named in his honor, the College of St. Gabriel. It was in this college in 1906 that a picture of Our Lady of Sorrows appeared to open and close its eyes. The eyes in this picture opened and closed during 15 minutes. These are the witnesses of the miracle. Garcia Moreno's resolutions and his rule of life, written in his own hand, were found on the last page of his copy of the Imitation of Christ. It will give some idea of his intimate union with God. Here are some of his resolutions. Every day I will hear Mass, say the Rosary, and read, besides a chapter of the Imitation, this rule and the annexed instructions. I will take care to keep myself as much as possible in the presence of God, especially in conversation, so as not to speak useless words. I will be constantly offering my heart to God, and principally before beginning any action. I will say to myself continually, I am worse than a demon, and deserve that hell should be my dwelling place. When I am tempted, I will add, what shall I think of this in the hour of my last agony? These are not the words of a tyrant, as he is now being portrayed by Freemasonry. He often attended Mass daily at the Dominican monastery. It was here, on the day of his assassination, August 6, 1875, the first Friday of the month, that he received Holy Communion for his last time. This plaque commemorates the fact. He lived here at the time, adjacent to the Plaza de Santo Domingo. At this location, where the house of his brother-in-law used to be located, he brought his young son, Gabriel, on his way to the presidential palace, where he was scheduled to make his acceptance speech for his third term of office. He had won the election without campaigning by a vast majority. On his way to the presidential palace, he stopped in the church of El Sagrario, where he knew the Blessed Sacrament would be exposed all day on the first Friday, dedicated to the Sacred Heart. Here he prayed prayers in preparation for death, as his prayer book found in his pocket when he died was so marked with a ribbon. He had just written to the Holy Father, quote, "May God enlighten and direct me in all things, and give me the grace to die in defense of the faith and of Holy Church." Unquote. He knew full well that the Masonic lodges had already condemned him to death. He often prayed before this statue of the Sacred Heart, and on that day for the last time. When he left the church, he happened to meet his assassin, Faustino Lemus Reo, who was not yet ready for his evil deed. The president had removed him from his post due to malpractices, but gave him the compensation of hiring him to make a saddle for his son. But on the balcony of the presidential palace, Reo struck Garcia Moreno with a machete, saying, "Die, tyrant, die, Jesuit." But he answered, "God does not die." This event took place in the Plaza de la Independencia, as foretold by Our Lady of Good Success in 1599. Quote, "Our Lord God will give the palm of martyrdom in the plaza on which this convent is located." The convent of the Conceptionist Sisters is next to the presidential palace at the corner of the Plaza of Independence. Reo tried to escape through the Plaza of Independence, but 4 soldiers from the nearby barracks of Battalion No. 1, which was in the buildings that currently house the Metropolitan Cultural Center of Quito, caught up with him and wounded him with swords. They arrested him and led him to the barracks, when a black corporal named Manuel Lopez shot him with his rifle and killed him. Garcia Moreno died of 6 gunshot wounds and 14 machete wounds. On the breast of the president was a relic of the True Cross, the scapular of the Passion, and that of the Sacred Heart. Round his neck was found his rosary, to which a medal was attached representing on one side Pope Pius IX and on the other the First Vatican Council. Here the funeral dirge played, while his body lay in state between 2 figures of living angels, displayed by Professor Jaime Benicio Sosa in his former museum of Garcia Moreno. In the Aurelio Espinoso Polit Museum is found the assassin's machete, and the skull bone which had been cut off the head of Garcia Moreno along with his metal and scourge. Here is a medical diagram of the skull bone. This is the wood of Garcia Moreno's coffin. Here is the crucifix he kept on his desk. After being struck, Garcia Moreno fell from this balcony. The former stables, then converted into shops, are below the balcony. A plaque marks the place where the president was attacked. He lived for 15 minutes afterwards and was brought to the chapel of Our Lady of Sorrows in the cathedral, where he received the last sacraments. A plaque marks the location. Being unable to speak, the priest asked him to squeeze his hand if he forgave his assassin, which he did. An angry mob chased one of the 4 assassins into some woods. Not being able to find the criminal, who was hiding in a tree trunk, they burned the woods to avenge the killing of their beloved president. Here is a photo of the body of the president when brought forth for public viewing. Here is a close-up view of the same photo. The Mass on the first anniversary of his death was well attended. His body had to be hidden in the convent of the Sisters of St. Catherine. It was rediscovered just before the 100th anniversary of his death in 1975. It was buried under the floor of the church. The only clue for locating the spot where his body was hidden was that it was said that it was put near a place where the ladder used for changing the curtain behind the altar was kept. This is how it looked when the body was rediscovered. Sister Mercedes was a witness of the discovery when she was still a novice. The place is now encased with cement. The clergy gathered to witness the discovery. The piece of skull bone kept in the museum perfectly fit the hole in the buried skull. The sisters were allowed to keep a major relic of Garcia Moreno, which they keep on display. Garcia Moreno's heart and the heart of Archbishop Chaka-Ibarba were discovered in the archway of the chapel in the convent of the Sisters of the Good Shepherd, which formerly Garcia Moreno had built as a retreat house for priests. This is one of the niches where the hearts were hidden in the archway. Here is the Archbishop's chalice, from which he drank wine poisoned with strychnine. He consequently died a few hours later. Garcia Moreno's body was then solemnly reburied in the crypt of the cathedral. A monument to him was erected in the cathedral. In Rome, Pope Pius IX and the Italian people had this bust sculpted in his honor. In Latin it reads, "Promoter of Justice, Avenger of Crimes." It was placed in the Pontifical College for Latin America. After hearing the life of our hero, let us consider 10 reasons for his canonization. The first reason is that such was the explicit desire of Pope St. Pius X. It was on November 1st, 1907, when Monsignor Manuel Maria Polite was in Rome and he received episcopal consecration. In an audience with His Holiness Pope Pius X, he heard these words from his lips, quote, "You ought to introduce Garcia Moreno's cause of beatification. Take advantage of my pontificate. You Ecuadorians will never find a pope like me, so desirous of placing your hero on the altars, nor a college of cardinals like the present one, so eager to contribute to the glorification of such an exalted person." Unquote. "O Holy Father," the new consecrated bishop answered, "the situation in Ecuador, as Her Holiness well knows, is horrifying. The government would never permit the least step in this regard. Unfortunately, in our country, anti-Christian political circumstances prevail to such a degree that it would be a dangerous temerity to initiate this so praiseworthy cause. For now, it only remains for us to wait in patience and to trust in God for a favorable, or perhaps a less adverse, future time for our immortal hero. The second reason is that Blessed Pope Pius IX spoke of him as a martyr, worthy of public honor by the Church. And I quote, "In the midst of all this, the Republic of Ecuador was miraculously distinguished by the spirit of justice and the unshakable faith of its president, who showed himself ever the submissive son of the Church, full of devotion for the Holy See, and of zeal to maintain religion and piety throughout his nation. And now the impious, in their blind fury, look upon as an insult to their pretended modern civilization the existence of a government which, while concerning itself with the material well-being of the people, strives at the same time to assure its moral and spiritual progress. Then, in the councils of darkness organized by the sects, these villains decreed the murder of the illustrious president. He fell under the steel of an assassin as a victim to his faith and Christian charity." Unquote, taken from his address to the Pilgrims of Laval on September 20th, 1875. Pope Pius IX did not limit himself to words. A few days later, he had a magnificent funeral service celebrated for the soul of Garcia Moreno in the Basilica of Our Lady of Transvestare, as pontiffs do when God has taken away one of the most eminent children of the Church. And when certain Italian Catholics determined to erect a statue in Garcia Moreno's honor, Pius IX largely contributed to it and placed it in the South American College in Rome. On the four sides of this monument is the following transcription: "To the faithful guardian of religion, patron of the science, most devoted to the Holy See, upholder of justice, avenger of crime, Gabriel Garcia Moreno, President of the Republic of Ecuador, was treacherously assassinated by the hand of the wicked on August 6, 1875. Good men of the whole world celebrated his heroic virtues, his glorious death for the faith, and wept over the crime which took him from the world. The Sovereign Pontiff, Pope Pius IX, by his munificence and by the gifts of a great number of Catholics, has raised this monument to the courageous defender of the Church and society." The third reason is that Pope Pius XII called him a martyr in 1948. In 1948, former Cardinal Eugenio Pacelli was the Supreme Pontiff Pius XII, who, when responding to the introductory address of the Ecuadorian ambassador, Don Carlos Manuel Larrea, recalled President Garcia Moreno and honored him with these epithets. Quote, "Great statesman, faithful son of the Church, and martyr for his faith." Unquote. This was on the 18th of July of the aforementioned year. In a radio address of June 19, 1949, to the Second National Eucharistic Congress in Quito, and in front of the wonder-working picture of the heart of Jesus, which soon after was crowned by his authority, the Supreme Pontiff said, quote, "It was opportune to dedicate a remembrance to that loyal son of the Church, the illustrious ruler, irreproachable gentleman, and upright Christian, who with the same daring descended into the crater of a volcano and fought like a Titan for the implanting of that ideal Christian republic, for which he yearned without retreating, even before his own bloody sacrifice, generously foreseen." Unquote. In 1954, when speaking with Cardinal da Costa, Archbishop of Florence, he said to him, quote, "One of the causes of canonization that I would most willingly like to see in Rome is that of Garcia Moreno." Unquote. The fourth reason is that his cause of beatification was begun in Quito by decree of Archbishop Carlos Maria de la Torre in the following words: "Serious and prudent men, well versed in sacred theology, and who have studied with special care and diligence, inside and outside the Republic, the death of the Lord Dr. Don Gabriel Garcia Moreno, and the cause which motivated it, believe that they have discovered in these the essential marks and characteristics of a true martyrdom. It seems to them that the deaths of Saint Canute, Saint Wenceslaus, Saint Thomas of Canterbury, and of the English Catholics sacrificed in the fateful days of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, keep perfect consonance and analogy with that of the Ecuadorian president, and that if the infallible decision of the Church has decorated them with the aureola of martyrdom, she could well encircle the brow of this man with it also." Such an assessment is far from negligible indeed, as it is the interest that not only simple and devout faithful, but even conspicuous members of the College of Cardinals have shown. Therefore, with the canonical framework, it becomes possible for this most upright magistrate to be placed upon the altars, notwithstanding the incredulity and apostasy of his century. He has shown his faith and his unwavering adherence to the Church and to the Vicar of Christ. His innermost conviction, expressed by constant and superhuman efforts, was only that the nation will be happy, which in its customs, its laws, and its constitution recognizes the sovereignty of Christ. These assessments have moved us to take the first steps for the clarification of such an important point. How much glory we would give to God, with what new splendor the Church would be clothed, and what unfading honor would redound to our country, if with infallible lips the Roman Pontiff would declare that Garcia Moreno was and ought to be called a martyr of Christ. Therefore, after invoking the light of the Holy Ghost, having heard the views of our fiscal promoter, fearful of incurring divine indignation, if perhaps we put forward some resistance to the designs which perhaps God may have upon the privileged soul, of whom Pius IX said that, quote, he had fallen victim of his faith and of his Christian charity, unquote. And Leo XIII that, quote, he surrendered his life for the Church at the hands of the wicked, unquote. And the Congress of 1875 that, quote, he shed his blood for the holy cause of religion, morality, and order, peace, and progress, unquote. In compliance with that which has been ordained by the Sacred Congregation of Rites in the documents cited above, we deem it beneficial to constitute the Historical Commission, which will have for its end to gather all the historical documents relating to the death of Dr. Gabriel Garcia Moreno, who died riddled with gun wounds in the Plaza of Independence of Quito, the first Friday, August 6, 1875. This commission will be composed of the Very Reverend Juan de Dios Navas, magisterial canon of our Metropolitan Church, an archivist of our ecclesiastical curia, of Reverend Father Joel Monroy, provincial of the Order of Ransom, and of Reverend Father Jose Laguerre of the Company of Jesus. Given in Quito on the 20th of December of 1939, Carlos Maria, Archbishop of Quito, Angel Humberto Jacome, Secretary. The fifth reason is that in Rome, the renowned theologian Carlos Luis Bio, who died in 1931, strongly supported his canonization. Blessed Carlos Maria de la Torre's allocution about the great man and renowned martyr, who was Garcia Moreno, has awakened in my soul such a lively joy that I cannot find words to express it. I have read it from beginning to end. Oh, what a beautiful figure, truly worthy of being placed on the altars. worthy of being proposed as an example to our modern Catholics, who unfortunately let themselves be more and more corrupted every day by the deadly principles of liberalism. I fervently pray that the political conditions of Ecuador will finally permit his cause to be initiated in the Sacred Congregation of Rites. How happy I would judge myself to be if I were the postulator. The sixth reason is that the Ecuadorian bishops likewise supported his canonization. His Excellency Bishop Heredia, Bishop of Guayaquil, has said, quote, "I've always maintained my opinion that God is asking for two equally obligatory things of us. Firstly, the construction of the National Basilica, so that national and perpetual worship may be given there. And secondly, the glorification, as far as possible on our part, of the Martyr of God, and of country amongst us." The Bishop of Riobamba, Monsignor Andres Machado, said, quote, "The day will come when Garcia Moreno will be exalted on the altars," unquote. Monsignor Polit, on January 22, 1922, referred to the Ecuadorian hero, whom I firmly hope will rise one day to the altars as a martyr of Jesus Christ. The words of His Excellency Carlos Maria de la Torre, Bishop of Riobamba, who became the Cardinal Archbishop of Quito, quote, "The moral greatness of Garcia Moreno has soared to such a height that without the glorious martyrdom that was its worthy conclusion, God's work would have been unfinished and imperfect." The seventh reason. The bishops of France added their support to the canonization of Garcia Moreno. When His Grace Archbishop Manuel Maria Polit of Quito returned to Guayaquil after a 3-month stay in Europe, he gave the following discourse on August 6, the anniversary of the death of Garcia Moreno. "In Paris, while conversing with some eminent bishops, I said to them that one of the objectives of my trip consisted in delivering the informative processes of our servants of God, Reverend Father Jose Maria Rofi and Saint Brother Miguel Febres Cordero. This statement not having been well received, those French prelates opposed me with these words, quote, 'Put these causes aside for now, and undertake the cause of beatification of Garcia Moreno. Bishops and religious of eminent virtue abound on the altars, whereas the exaltation of someone like Garcia Moreno would be the first and sensational case of a president of a republic haloed with such honors. Commission the Ecuadorians to collect all the documents that exist in your country regarding the death of Garcia Moreno, and all the rest will be done by the French episcopate.' The eighth reason is that Father Mateo Crowley, the founder of the Home Enthronement of the Sacred Heart, longed for his canonization. Even more, I dare say it was Garcia Moreno who, with his hands anointed with his glorious blood, put the precious labarum into my hands. Oh, how happy I would consider myself to be if one day it were given to me to contribute in some way to his exaltation on the altars, in order to pay for the gift that he gave me. Such gave a definitive direction to my vocation of social apostolate. If then, one day, the Church renders such glory to the President Martyr, the Congregation of the Sacred Hearts should attain that Rome would assign him to us as patron of the enthronement crusade, since I made my debut in the shadow of his standard. The ninth reason is that first-class miracles have been worked through his intercession. For example, the sudden cure of deafness. At the end of November 1943, the historic oleograph of the heart of Jesus of Garcia Moreno was exposed in the Cathedral of Loja, receiving the homage of the crowds, when the Franciscan brother Diego Navarrete joined them and raised the following prayer. O Garcia Moreno, you who consecrated Ecuador to the heart of Jesus before this picture, work a miracle. Make me recover the use of my ears. I was given no hope in Quito, a cold climate. I was given no hope in Guayaquil, a hot climate. I was given no hope in Loja, a moderate climate. I want to be a missionary in Zamora, to teach the catechism to the Jivaros. But how can I do it being deaf? You who consecrated Ecuador to the heart of Jesus before this picture, make me hear. A few minutes pass. He pays attention and relates that he hears everything, the bell that rings, the people who pray. He exclaimed, "Now I can go to Zamora." 8 years later, he spoke with me in Gualecio and said to me, "I was unable to hear for 6 months. I can swear that I was given no hope in Quito, in Guayaquil, and in Loja. The doctors who attended me can swear that they gave me no hope." Here is a case that can be considered a first-class miracle. An oath was assigned by Brother Navarrete and by each one of these 3 doctors. I am confirmed in the persuasion that the cause did not fail for lack of first-class miracles. The 10th and final reason is that in war-torn post-World War II Belgium, Garcia Moreno is compared to Charlemagne and St. Louis of France in a booklet explaining his worldwide modern importance. Garcia Moreno was far from being the passing of a meteor without leaving a trail behind itself. Not to present his personality in all its glory would be not to give God the glory of his works, and to this great man the immortality which is due to him even on earth. It would be, moreover, to deprive the human race of an enormous help, since the life of Garcia Moreno presents a providential lesson to ward off the cataclysm which he alone undertook to remedy. What more beautiful example could be offered to our rulers, faced with almost superhuman difficulties which characterize these post-war years? In fact, the clearing of a heap of ruins, the bringing of prosperity, and above all the rectifying of the standards now so wrong, and the leading of nations according to the principles of the Christian life under the gaze of God and of his Church. Did he not achieve all this in a splendid manner in a few years within the sphere in which he had to act? The beatification process for Garcia Moreno was indeed begun before the Second Vatican Council. Here is the story. It was Alberto Mogagui, a member of the Eucharistic Crusade in Riobamba, Ecuador, who lit the spark of the beatification process that the bishops of Ecuador were themselves afraid to ignite. On his own initiative, Alberto wrote the first prayer asking God for the canonization of President Gabriel Garcia Moreno, who, as Pope Pius IX said, quote, fell under the steel of an assassin as a victim to his faith and Christian charity. For Pius IX, also, the death of Garcia Moreno is the death of a martyr, unquote. A Jesuit priest, Father Severo Gomez Jurado, encouraged this young man to seek approval for his prayer from the local bishop. The Vicar General of the diocese approved this prayer on the feast of St. Michael, September 29, 1938. Within 4 days, 2,000 holy cards with this prayer were distributed. Other Jesuits became afraid of Masonic reprisals, but they were reassured by the superiors with these words, "The fathers of higher authority had been consulted, and all were in agreement that we ought not to intervene in this propagation. God has indicated the time in which we can honor, as is fitting, the man who honors man." Unquote. The distribution continued, with the Masons hardly reacting except for some sarcastic remarks in the press. Father Ricardo Vasquez then boldly published and distributed some leaflets with the following questions and answers. What are the conditions that the Church requires for the giving of the title of martyr to a heroic Christian? Answer: the canonical conditions are 3. Real and voluntary accepted death of the victim, unless God prevents it miraculously. That the tyrant or perpetrator of the death caused it unjustly, and that the reason for sacrificing the victim be the hatred of God, of the Church, of the true religion, or some Christian virtue, or the rights and prerogatives of the Church. Were these conditions verified in the death of Garcia Moreno? He knew very well that they were trying to kill him as a victim, and he was preparing himself for the sacrifice. Quote, "The enemies of God and of the Church can kill me, but God does not die. I am going to be assassinated. I'm happy to die for the faith." Unquote. Who killed Garcia Moreno? There can be no doubt that the Masonic lodges and other enemies of the Catholic religion killed him. Why did they assassinate him? Because they were seeing in him a model of a Catholic ruler. How did Blessed Pius IX and Leo XIII judge the death of Garcia Moreno? Pius IX said, "Garcia Moreno fell under the steel of the assassin, a victim of his faith and of his Christian charity." And Leo XIII, "He fell under the steel of the wicked for the Church." Does this mean to say that Garcia Moreno did not have any faults or defects? Not at all, since even the great saints have their faults, and for this reason they do penance. How do martyrs wash away their sins? Answer: by shedding their blood for the love of God, so much so that, perfectly purified, they immediately go up to paradise. Who still hates Garcia Moreno? The Freemasons, the Socialists, and the enemies of the Church and of the homeland. Also some badly influenced Catholics, imbued with prejudices, do not know the hero. Are there some people who reverence and love him very much? All Catholics and the best people of Ecuador, and likewise all good people outside of Ecuador, with rare exceptions. Can one implore the divine favor and ask for miracles through the intercession of Garcia Moreno by making use of his image or of his relics? Yes, but only in private. And in the event of obtaining them, it is fitting that it be reported in detail to the ecclesiastical authorities for consequent purposes. God is accustomed to glorify his servants in this way. Blessed soul of Garcia Moreno, pray for me. A few months later, a second prayer for the canonization of the President Martyr was approved by the bishops of Pasto, Colombia, Santiago, Chile, Sao Paulo, Brazil, a bishop in Argentina, and another in Scotland through the intervention of Mr. Hamish Fraser. A third prayer was given an indulgence of 300 days by the Archbishop of Quito. During the course of 40 years, the total number of holy cards that were published with prayers for the canonization of Garcia Moreno surpassed 100,000. In November 1939, 4 Franciscan tertiaries of Riobamba, including Alberto Raguay, personally went to present many petitions for the canonization of Garcia Moreno to the Apostolic Nuncio of the Holy See, Archbishop Efren Forni, in Quito. As a result, a month later, Archbishop Carlos Maria de la Torre published the decree of introduction of the cause, which we have already cited when giving the reasons for this beatification. Some 7 months after his appointment as a member of the Historical Commission, Father Leguer died suddenly and the thesis he had been writing about the Garcian martyr could not be found. As his replacement, Archbishop de la Torre appointed Father José Ricardo Vázquez. Father Severo Gómez Jurado was appointed a member of the aforesaid commission on February 16, 1957. On April 17, 1962, the now Cardinal La Torre sent a note asking if the commission had finished collecting the historical data required before beginning the analysis of the data. Unfortunately, the answer was still negative. But a few years later, Father Gómez Jurado ran jubilantly to the residence of Cardinal La Torre, who was himself too elderly to come any longer to the archiepiscopal palace, and said to him, "Now I have the materials ready for the process." "I am glad," he answered. "Go to my secretary, Monsignor Angel Humberto Jacobe, and tell him on my behalf to write the decree establishing the process, which I will approve with my signature." Now the Cardinal had previously suffered a stroke and was so unable to write any document himself. But weeks, months, and then years passed by, and the decree was neither drafted nor written. Father Gómez Jurado presented more petitions from Quito and Madrid, but received no reply. Finally, in May of 1974, Mr. Hamish Fraser informed him that to his query about the status of the cause, Cardinal La Torre's successor, His Eminence Pablo Muñoz Vega, had replied substantially as follows: "Unfortunately, there is not the environment, neither the religious nor the political." Here you see a copy of the letter which Mr. Hamish Fraser received from Archbishop Vega, the Archbishop of Quito, dated the 14th of August, 1970. He says that the cause was not introduced because of the political religious environment of the country at that time. The global importance of this cause was well stated in a small booklet approved by José Carton de Viart, Vicar General of Mechelen, Belgium, on November 11, 1944. Garcia Moreno was far from being the passing of a meteor, without leaving a trail behind itself. Not to present his personality in all its glory would be to withhold from God the glory of his works, and to this great man the immortality which is due to him even on earth. It would be, moreover, to deprive the human race of an enormous help, since the life of Garcia Moreno presents a providential lesson to ward off the cataclysm which he alone undertook to remedy. What more beautiful example could be offered to our rulers for the leading of nations according to the principles of Christian life under the gaze of God and of his Church? Did he not in a few years achieve all this in a splendid manner within the sphere in which he had to act? The continued opposition of Masons to any veneration of this courageous martyr further indicates the global importance of this cause. Their fury was first shown by their attempts to desecrate his body buried in the cathedral. His remains were consequently removed secretly in 1895 to be reburied in the convent of the St. Catherine Mothers. Later, a refutation of Reverend Father Berth's excellent biography of Garcia Moreno was written in 1889 by the ex-president Borrero and has been repeatedly reprinted throughout the last century. More recently, in 2007, a movie was produced besmirching the memory of the nation's founding father entitled "Se que vienen a matarme," "They are coming to kill me." Yet here we find the man of character and singular model Christian foretold by Our Lady of Good Success on January 16, 1599, to whom our Lord God will give the palm of martyrdom in the plaza on which this convent is located. He will consecrate the Republic of Ecuador to the divine heart of my beloved Son, and this consecration will sustain the Catholic religion in the subsequent years, which will be ill-fated for the Church. Let us finish this presentation with reading one of the prayers for the beatification for Garcia Moreno approved by the Church. This prayer was approved by the bishops of Ecuador, as well as bishops of Colombia, Chile, Brazil, Argentina, and Scotland. O most Sacred Heart of Jesus, remember the consecration that President Gabriel Garcia Moreno made to thee of his republic, of the enthronement of thy sacred image in his presidential home, and of his blood shed to seal his unshakable adherence to thee and to thy vicar, the Pope. And grant us the canonical glorification of such an exemplary ruler, that men powerful in deeds and words may rise up for the cause of religion and country. And finally grant us the particular grace which we ask of thee according to thy good pleasure. Amen.
Bueno, agradecemos muchísimo al padre Paul Kimball por haber enviado este video, muy informativo, una excelente introducción para lo que va a ser la vida de don Gabriel García Moreno, una excelente introducción también para el Congreso. También queremos agradecerle que por un breve momento más que sea, entre todas sus responsabilidades y obligaciones, pudo vernos. Un saludo al padre Kimball. Y así concluye la primera parte de la primera jornada de este Congreso Internacional Garciano. Los esperamos a la 1:00. Espero verlos a todos. We conclude the intervention of Father Paul Kimball. We would like to thank him for this great video. It was an amazing introduction to the life of Gabriel García Moreno, and also an amazing introduction to what will be the International Garcian Congress. We would like to apologize for some technical errors that we had during the transmission. And this was the first part of the first day of the Congress. We would like to see you all at 1 p.m. Ecuador time for the second part. Thank you very much for participating.